For 50 years, Ron Howard seemed perfect to all-American boy from Mayberry, who became Hollywood royalty. But in his latest interview, he revealed the dark hiding behind the smile, the devastating choice he made in 1991 that haunts him still, the family member he almost lost addiction while he was winning awards, and the moment on set when his body gave out. Ron's confession about what really happened during those missing months will break your heart. Ronald William Howard was born on March 1st, 1954, in Duncan, Oklahoma, and from the moment he opened his eyes, the room already spoke in dialogue. His father, Rance Howard, had adopted Howard as a stage name back in 1948 before joining the Air Force. His mother, Jean Spiegel, trained as an actress and married Rance in 1949 in Winchester, Kentucky. When Ron came along, Rance was still in uniform, balancing military life with screen dreams. But even before Ron learned to talk, he was already on film. At just 18 months old, he made his screen debut in a Western called Frontier Woman, filmed between late 1955 and early 1956. That set wasn't just his first job. It was the start of a life where childhood and camera marks blurred into one. While other toddlers learned to walk, Ron was learning where to stand under the lights. As television moved west, the Howards packed up and left Oklahoma behind. Rance drove the family straight to California. Not for sunshine, but for proximity. He wasn't chasing glamour. He was betting everything on being near the new center of TV. Ron was just a toddler, but that move put him next to producers, writers, and sets before he ever saw a school desk. He was already working on Playhouse 90 before grade school, and by the time his brother Clint was born on April 20th, 1959, in Burbank, the family's plan was working. Their earnings were managed in-house. No studio guardians, no outsiders, just a father balancing his own acting work carefully with being the one-man support crew for his son. Rance took more than 140 film jobs and 177 TV appearances. Not in the name of the fame chase, but to be close to Ron's world and to keep it moving. Then there was October 3rd, 1960. Ron was 6. That night, America met Opie Taylor for the first time on The Andy Griffith Show. On paper, Ron was another child actor, credited as Ronnie Howard. But something connected. On set, something deeper happened. Rance didn't just drop his son off and pick him up later. He challenged the writers. After an early read-through, he told the producers that the show's father-son scenes felt fake. Andy Griffith listened. They shook hands on something real. In fact, the Andy and Opie relationship would mirror the one between Ron and Rance. That handshake built the show's soul. Over the years, Rance even guest starred 5 times. Sticking around as Ron handled scripts and schedules most grown-ups would buckle under. For 8 seasons through 1968, Ron didn't just grow up. He lived inside a television childhood shaped by love, work, and adult expectations. All this dressed in small-town stories. Their home in Burbank wasn't some star palace. Ron went to Robert Louis Stevenson Elementary, then David Starr Jordan Junior High, and later John Burroughs High School. The family ate meatloaf and fish sticks and saved money like actors who knew it could all be over tomorrow. There were stacks of scripts near the dinner table, but Rance and Jean had rules. No hired guardians. No stage parent chaos. Ron played park league sports when he wasn't memorizing lines. Clint joined the industry, too, building a career of more than 200 acting credits largely out of the spotlight. Brothers, but also co-workers, they learned early what it meant to punch a clock with cameras. Ron's way of working didn't come from child star instinct. It came from training. Rance taught him how to listen, how to pause, how to respond like a person, not a performer. When Ron landed the role of Opie, it was because he didn't act like a kid actor. He just acted. Producer Sheldon Leonard noticed right away. He said Ron didn't try to be cute. He just told the truth. That's what Rance drilled into him. Be truthful, not cute. Even at 6, it showed. Ron's early pay was in the low hundreds of dollars per episode, but it climbed as the show became a hit. He was still losing baby teeth when fans stopped him in Burbank asking for autographs. But while his face was on screen, his childhood was quietly slipping away. One of the most unforgettable moments came in 1963. Season 4, Episode 1, Opie the Birdman. 9-year-old Ron filmed a scene where Opie raises orphan baby birds after accidentally killing their mother. There were no dramatic tricks. He just stood there breathing, blinking, letting real emotion lead. Director Bob Sweeney barely needed retakes. Andy Griffith called it adult-level timing. Ron used substitution. If the scene called for sadness, he thought of something that actually hurt. Then, he let it go when the camera stopped. That wasn't just talent. It was control most kids never have. But even with love on set, Ron felt alone. He called those years a golden cage. Safe but sealed. On set, he had a tiny schoolroom near Stage 40 at Desalakina. California law said 3 hours of school, 8 hours total per day. A welfare worker stayed nearby. But Ron didn't have real classmates. He did math while Grips rolled dollies. At lunch, he sat with his dad, or the prop guy. Andy would play guitar. Don Knotts told clean jokes. They tried to make it feel normal. But Ron missed sandlot baseball and neighborhood bike rides. He didn't complain, but he felt it. In 1962, the Music Man brought a new kind of pressure. He was 8 years old and cast as Winter Peru in a big-budget musical. He was tone deaf. He had 2 left feet. He spent hours being coached by music conductor Ray Hindorf through the song Gary, Indiana. Ron panicked during the soft shoe routine and leaned over to whisper to Shirley Jones, "I can't do it, Shirley. I can't do it." She talked him down. The crew shot him from the knees up and added tap sounds later, but it worked. His shy, sweet performance helped make the film one of the biggest hits of 1962. What no one saw was how hard he'd fought behind the scenes. Between takes, Ron memorized not just his lines, but Shirley Jones's, too. He played with dolls and acted out full scenes, directing miniature actors through their marks and lines. To others, it looked like play. To Shirley, it looked like a director in the making. Rance had already started writing scripts for the Flintstones and other shows. He taught Ron how to break down a scene, how to understand a character's reason for every word. Those lessons didn't disappear. They stayed buried till Ron started directing films like Grand Theft Auto at just 23. By 1966, Ron tried something new. He joined the Monroes, a Western series filmed in the Wyoming Rockies. It was rough, real terrain. He learned horseback riding by watching ranch hands. The location was expensive. The series only lasted 26 episodes before NBC canceled it in 1967. Ron was 13. For the first time, he felt rejected. The Andy Griffith Show was still going strong, but the Monroes hit him hard. He thought it was his fault. That sting stayed with him. In 1968, the Brady Bunch pilot came calling. Ron was offered an audition. He turned it down, not because he didn't want it, but because his parents said no. Rance and Gene made a rule. Either of them had to be home every day between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. If a job came in, they wanted balance. They wanted him to grow up normal. Ron wanted that, too. At 14, he craved school, space friends. He passed on the audition, and it may have saved his career, as by 1974 he became Richie Cunningham on Happy Days, the role that carried him into his teen years and gave him the money and freedom to step behind the camera. By 1969, Ron's agent pulled off something big. He secured Ron residuals from the Andy Griffith Show reruns, about $50,000 a year. That was more than what Sandy Koufax, at his peak in baseball, was pulling in. But the Howards didn't splurge. They just kept it lean. They opened savings accounts, bought U.S. bonds, and just kept living. Ron begged to invest in a go-kart business with friends. His parents let him. He lost about $25,000. That was his first lesson in risk. Acting made him money, but managing it, that was a different story. That lesson stuck. April 1st, 1968. The final episode of the Andy Griffith Show aired. Ron was 14. He knew the set inside and out. He knew where every light hung and where every grip stood. That last week felt heavy. People kept call sheets as souvenirs. Andy and Ron stayed late talking baseball. Their on-camera goodbye was quiet, but Ron felt something ending. He had lived his entire childhood 48 feet, from a camera lens. Now he had to be a teenager, and within 2 years, he was already balancing school with auditions. The day they took down the Mayberry sets, The next chapter had already started. It is now 1974, and 19-year-old Ron Howard walks into Gary Marshall's office and changes the course of his life. No, he didn't read the lines like the others. He just sat down and ordered a cherry phosphate like he'd been going there every day. The chemistry with Henry Winkler was instant. It wasn't the script, but it didn't matter. For 12 minutes, Ron became Richie Cunningham, and Marshall saw it. ABC had doubts. They were concerned that the kid from Mayberry couldn't play a teenager any longer. But Gary Marshall pushed back, and Ron signed a 5-year deal for $7,500 per episode. He had beaten out 35 other actors, not by acting louder, but by sounding exactly like someone who'd help your grandmother with groceries. That's what got him 255 episodes. By season 5 in 1977, Ron had been playing the same cheerful teenager for so long it started to feel fake. He was 23, playing a kid frozen in time while the real world was burning outside. Vietnam was everywhere on the news and the papers, and it didn't make sense that Richie never noticed. So Ron wrote a 3-page memo to ABC. He asked for real topics. He pitched a story about Richie facing the draft. They said no. Too political, too risky for advertisers. So the compromise came in glances. Richie reading newspapers about the war in the background. A passing comment about deferments. Ron felt stifled. He later told TV Guide that being a happy teenager when the world wasn't happy anymore made him feel like he couldn't breathe. That frustration planted something inside him. He didn't just want to act. He wanted control. He wanted to direct. In 1976, Fonzie was everywhere. Leather jackets were selling, posters, toys, lunchboxes, all adding up to $50 million in merchandise. ABC tried to rename the show Fonzie's Happy Days. Ron had seen this kind of thing before. His father, Rance, had fought for billing rights his entire career. So Ron stood up. He was making $15,000 per episode, but he told them he'd walk. He gave them 48 hours to keep the title the way it was. If they didn't, they'd lose him, and they risked a $500,000 contract breach lawsuit. Gary Marshall sided with him. The show wasn't just about Fonzie, it was about a family. ABC backed down halfway. The name stayed, but Fonzie got top billing in the credits. It was a silent win. Then in October 1977, Ron got his shot. He directed Season 5, Episode 5, A Date with Fonzie. The budget was tight at just $10,000. 32 scenes, 3 days. He showed up with a shot list, so detailed the crew referred to it as Spielberg level. One scene followed Fonzie through Arnold's Diner in a 90-second tracking shot. Normally, that would take hours. Ron nailed it in 2 takes, saving $3,000. Ratings jumped by 12%. That meant 31 million people watched. ABC gave him 2 more episodes to direct and paid him $2,500 extra per episode on top of his acting fee. Henry Winkler later said Ron made him uncomfortable in the best way. He forced real emotion instead of just catchphrases. While all this was happening, something else was growing. In 1976, Ron acted in Eat My Dust, a cheap teen crash movie from Roger Corman. But it wasn't just for fun. He had made a deal. He'd act only if Corman let him direct the next one. That film was Grand Theft Auto, released in 1977. Ron co-wrote it with his dad, Rance. The budget was $602,000, but the film made $15 million. That's a 2,400% return. They destroyed 70 cars on camera, including a $40,000 Rolls-Royce, 3 Cadillacs, and 7 police cars. Ron didn't wait for permits. He shot on real roads near Victorville. The cameras shook, the cars flipped, the chaos was real. He even used his mom, his brother Clint, and Happy Days castmate Marion Ross in the movie. The film hit theaters on June 16, 1977. And suddenly, no one was laughing at the redhead from Mayberry anymore. Ron was only 21 when he married Cheryl Alley on June 7, 1975. They were high school sweethearts. He proposed on a couch at his parents' house. Henry Winkler was his best man. Andy Griffith and Tom Bosley were there, too. When Cheryl went into labor with their first child, Ron was on set. He dropped everything and rushed to the hospital. Years later, he said it clearly. Cheryl was a real story. She always had been. While he filmed, wrote, and directed, she was the one holding it all together. In 1982, Ron took a leap with Night Shift, a dark comedy set in a morgue. The story was wild. 2 guys running a prostitution ring out of a New York City morgue. It starred Henry Winkler and introduced Michael Keaton in his first major role. The budget was $8 million. It earned $21 million. Keaton recorded ideas into a tape recorder, danced around with Walkman, and yelled, "Is this a great country or what?" Test audiences thought it was too raunchy. The MPAA got nervous, but it worked.